Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Happiness Journey with Dan podcast, where every journey is worth living. My name is Dr. Dan, and I'm your host for today's episode. I'm a bilingual cognitive behavior psychotherapist specializing in anger management issues, both court-appointed and private, marriage counseling using the EFT method, dissociative disorders, narcissistic personality disorders, depression, anxiety, dream analysis, and also provide life, business, and retirement coaching support. I provide individual one-on-one sessions in both French or English, and also do provide group settings. If you need any assistance, reach out to DMB therapy and coaching services at 301-325-1550, and our website can be found at lifecoachddanamzallag.com. Today, I'm very excited to have for our 8th episode of season 9, a very special guest and marriage and family therapist, Dr. Chao Zhao. And just like every of my past episode, I will leave it up to the guests to properly introduce themselves, as no one can do a better job. Chao, the floor is yours.
Hi, Dr. Dan. I'm so happy to be here. Myself, I am a marriage and family therapist, associate, and art therapist with a specialization in working with people of all ages from multicultural backgrounds, which is have a emphasis on Asian American to develop healthier relationship and maintaining sex satisfaction for adults as well.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for being here today, Chao. So what made you become a marriage and family therapist? I mean, did you go through yourself some difficulties in your personal life for that to happen?
Yeah, I wouldn't say there's no difficulties, but definitely there has been time I've been doubting whether this relationship is healthy or not, whether this is because of me or the communication or the cultural differences, So those plays into that doubt. And then so I also felt like I can develop healthy relationship with coworkers or clients, but when it comes to dating, it's just sometimes gets so many questions. So I actually graduated in Beijing from a marketing background. So I worked as a financial planner over almost a decade. And then my clients always like the top successful clients. They're have all the good reputations. They have their personal jets, but they always sit in my office holding a cup of coffee and talking to me for half an hour, just venting. I was like, oh, super famous people or wealthy people have all sorts of troubles and doubts as well. I felt like connected with them in that sense.
So what have you seen based on your own personal experience that you have gone through versus what you help other people go through in terms of their challenges? Have you seen like similarities between each and every of your client in terms of how to solve a toxic relationship?
Exactly. So with that awareness, I started my own journey to just transition my career from a financial planner supporting clients from a finance aspect to a deeper level, which I felt like, oh, that's where they got stuck. Also myself. Mm-hmm. So I felt no matter whether it's a toxic relationship with your partner or coworker or your parents, right? So that all comes back to the relationship with yourself.
Correct. Yes.
So I felt that's fascinating. Mm-hmm. I want to make that clear because the meaning of the relationship with yourself is, for example, we always say attachment, or those are very big, right? In solving relationship issues. But the attachment is when you were a baby, the connect with your parents or caregivers, right? But that's very important for you to form your relationship with yourself. So that's what I meant. It all goes back to how do you see yourself, or how you adapt the perception from your parents or caregivers.
Mm-hmm. I see. Now, do you feel that based on the culture, you're talking about Asian American or Indian culture or any other culture when it comes to relationship, mm-hmm. you feel that there's a big gap or a miscommunication on how people interact, and especially when there's cross-culture relationships. So let's say Asian American will date someone who's from India. So they have a complete different culture. Does that put a lot more impact on the success of that relationship?
Yes, exactly. I think myself as an immigrant and then grew up in Beijing and came here for the career transition, and surprisingly found myself to be completed within in the process of acculturation, assimilation, you know. So when it comes to dating other people from different culture, there must be the process of relearning about yourself. So it's kind of like the process completing the relationship with yourself as well.
Yes, yes. And so in your practice, Chao, do you feel that there's like a lot of um, different approach that you use to be able to solve every problem that comes in your office? I mean, obviously, there's a lot of common denominators when it comes to issues in toxic relationship and all. But have you come across something that you start scratching your forehead to say, I've never seen that before?
Uh, yeah, I think yes. Um, for example, some people may have different beliefs or experiences. That's something I've never seen before, right? So I would start the process. I would always call that I'm not expert from than you, but you are the expert of yourself. So I want to show my clients that we're equal in this space, and even you own more than me because I am a listener. I am a witness in the process, or we can grow together. So within that, I think um, we can providing clients with their inner strengths. That's the purpose, to facilitate them to connect with their inner strengths. So no matter how strange the situation is or unique it is, so it always go back to, okay, let's look inward
Mhm.
and reconnect with yourself. What's the authentic self? Your definition, where you grew up, how your family interaction was, and how you see yourself, right? And your dating history and how that has been impact you.
Mhm. Now, when it comes to trying to help people, especially like in relationship, when we have different personality traits, such as, or even personality attributes when it comes to narcissistic personality disorders or bipolar disorders or whatever else comes into the mix, um, how are you trying to help the victim, if you would call them a victim situation where they are the one who is experiencing a spouse that is narcissistic? How do you help them solve the problem? Because obviously NPD is a mental illness per se, so it's kind of hard to be able to change the other person that is not seeking therapy. So how do you work with them in that regard?
So that's a great question. Actually, it's really hard to simplify that process with a certain like structure. So, but I can share the core concept that how I see that process,
Mhm.
or based on the past the clients that I've been working with. So I think I always share with my clients during consultation or the first couple of sessions is so whether you're identify with you're a victim or survivor, that's up to you, but I want you to know there's no black or white. So we're all in this gray area, which means we comes from, I think it's heavily influenced by Lao Tzu. The concept of philosophy is knowing others is intelligence, knowing yourself is true wisdom,
Mhm.
and mastering others is a strength, but mastering yourself is the true power, which is I provide the power inner strengths to them. Hey, reconnect with your inner strengths so
Mhm.
you can find the solution. I can help you, support you to reconnect that, to clarify that which direction you want to go. but comes back to the NPD, right? So it's really hard for, as you mentioned, it's really hard for them to change.
Yes.
But some people has different levels of NPD traits. Some people only have those traits, maybe combined with other mental health illness, for example, maybe suffering anxiety. So they would like, no, this is all your fault, right? Yeah. Blaming others to make them feel better. So it's hard to change, but some people might change. So there's the work that you need to get support from a professional mental health providers. That might be something that your family and friends would say, leaning towards one direction, like work through this or communicate better. So that's that. But also with the concept, the philosopher Laws's quote, I think that's very important to look into yourself. It's not about blaming yourself. It's about connect with your inner strengths. And because in that process, you can master yourself. And so you know better what do you want in this relationship.
Okay. And so when it comes to the want and needs out of a relationship, obviously both different here. How do you teach the couple or the individual about what is their priority? Because obviously some people want, like a home with picket fence, they want this, they want that, they want like a lot of materialistic stuff, but they forget about what they really need deep inside. And sometimes they need someone to awaken them, someone to get them out of that little bubble that they're in. So how do you kind of like, do you dig deep into the past to figure out exactly if that was caused by traumatic experiences that they've suffered from or childhood experiences? How do you go around it, or how do you go to help them open their eyes and see what's really important to them?
Yes. So I think in that process, when you're describing that situation, that scenario, something comes into my mind is art therapy, which is my specialized training is. So through art therapy, we can really combine all the theorization aspect, like either is a CBT or attachment. From all those lenses, we can apply our therapy technique to really uncover the unconscious mind, to see what's deeper rooted in that process. Like, I don't know what's my wants and need, or I want everything. Right? So that's really helpful for my clients to see that what's stuck there, what's important for them. Because sometimes when we're in a dating relationship, we lose ourselves completely for the other part. So in that process, I always say, okay, so you felt you were being you were in a relationship that's toxic and you're very painful. But when you were looking at yourself, do you feel like you were providing the opportunities for your other part to do the toxic things? Yeah. So through art therapy, usually we would do some simple drawings, sketching, or whatever way that you feel comfortable with. And then it will uncover, clients usually go back to, oh, I see my parents.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I see my childhood. Oh, this is the first dating experience that happened to me.
So they're drawing their emotions, is that correct?
Yes, actually, the drawing, the directives can be a lot of things, like a moment, or you and your family.
Okay.
So it doesn't have to be just show me your emotions. Of course, it could be, but usually it goes back to the early experience and how they connect with others, or how they see themselves from the surrounding, the voices coming into themselves.
Oh, I see what you mean. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, when someone goes through a difficult relationship, so let's say someone's been single for 4 or 5 years, and finally they meet someone, they're super excited, obviously, and then they start really being blinded by those red flags that we see online about the scammers, catfishers, the swindlers, and so on and so forth. At this point in time, they will somewhat hesitate to be able to express themselves because of the fear of being rejected or abandoned or whatever else come next. So they will learn to kind of like keep in their emotions, not say, hey, the way that you treated me before, I didn't like it. Then because they'll be afraid to say, well, if you don't like it, tough luck, hasta la vista, baby, kind of thing. So how do you encourage your client to speak up, be straightforward? And if this person doesn't meet your standard, it doesn't matter if you continue being single until you find the right one. But a lot of people are afraid of being single. That's the problem, the fear.
Yes, exactly. So I think even myself, I've experienced that, like, oh, this is not healthy, but I don't think I can leave. I just feel afraid of being alone. I think that's very common, that I hear that a lot too. So when it happened, I think there are a lot of ways for us to take some time, because sometimes it's because of the personality, and that's how you perceive your parents or caregivers interact. Like who will say that harsh words, right? First, it's tough. So don't push yourself. I think like a lot of mindfulness or journaling, that's really helpful for you to find your inner strengths, to put that straightforward in a way that you think fits your personality and your cultural background and your situation in the relationship. Because when you're in a toxic relationship, you don't want to make the other part to be in that zone to be toxic to you. So be careful of how you put that straightforward.
But then the fear of being abandoned by the other person, because you are the type of person that doesn't let any BS kind of like come into your life. So then that will show the other person to say, oh God, this person is too demanding, or she's too this, or she's too that. How do you like encourage your clients to be able to just speak up when something doesn't go their way, to just say, hey, you know what? I felt that you disrespected me or whatever. I would prefer, or at least I would expect an apology.
Yes. So there are a lot of communication skills practice in our sessions, actually. So we can talk about the scenario, or based on your past experience, and then bring that in. And every couple has their unique way of communicating. Some might texting each other, or just talk face to face. So I think there's a great way that you can write a letter or just play a board game. Now has a lot of intimate board games like the card decks, and you can just pick one. And also, without purchasing anything, you can just designate 10 to 15 minutes each week, and then just couples sit together and take turns. Each part say like, oh, this week I appreciate you something, 1, 2, 3. And then followed with this past week, I think something we could have done better. So that's a way. Each party take turns. So in that, providing space for each party to show what we want to improve together.
So overall, if let's say our many listeners, because in this podcast we have like over 100,000 people just listening. So of course many just want to hear what relates to their own personal problem. Okay, Chao. So I'm sure that many here are experiencing challenges in their relationship, in their marriage, whatever else come next. So if you would have to give advice to the listeners, what would be the 5 most important things that you would say, these are the first thing that you need to really focus on before you could determine if this is a relationship that is worth going or moving towards to the future, or just say, this person will never change, I have to break it off?
Yeah. Okay. So that's very practical, right? When we're going into the practical zone, how do I do it? If I think, how do I identify that? So I think education is the first thing, which means you're going to do some research, no matter whether you get some professional help or you do research reading articles or on the website, just Google maybe. And you can find, oh, this is other people's experience. Oh, this sounds similar to me, how other people solve that. But just don't fall into the trap. Sometimes anybody can provide advice. So those you need to distinguish that. So education is first. And then I think is identify. So through the identifying process is there are clear boundaries actually. So like going back to the previous question, like how do I break that or identifying is important. How do you know this is a unsolvable problem relationship, right? So that's we don't want to dive deeper, go into details, or what are all the signs of each couple's interaction, which means toxic. But you could always go on the national hotline for assault or toxic relationship to look at the power and control wheel. That's very clear. There are a lot of signs. What are the signs? But there is a common core signal is if you felt you constantly unhappy because you were in the relationship and you felt constantly being blamed for everything. And that's a huge signal. And then you can look into that, whether there's verbal or what type of toxic relationship. So that's a second. And then the third, I think, is knowing about yourself. That means your cultural background, your family upbringing, knowing yourself. Ask yourself, I always tell my clients, look into the mirror and ask yourself who you are. What do you want? Where do you want to be? Right? How do you want to spend the rest of your life in the relationship? Do you think that's going somewhere else or it's not? You know the best. So ask yourself who you are, your core values. And then I think it's the fourth is a self-sympathy, which is self-compassion or self-love, whatever you want to call it. You when you love yourself, appreciate yourself, you know your boundaries. A lot of people ask me, how do I set the boundaries? I don't know where is the fine line. Yes, there's no fine line, but you know every moment. There might be switching sometimes, but there's the clear boundaries when you really love yourself, knowing who you are, right? And then the last one is constantly doing the prevention work, which is keep yourself in the zone that you're peaceful in yourself, so you won't trigger your partner. Because every toxic relationship, there might be sometimes switching the roles.
That's correct.
It's not always one person being the only toxic one all the time. So there's maybe a majority time this person has some tendency to do some behavior. But once a toxic person, they've been in the toxic relationship themselves before.
Correct.
So they have their own story, needs to be processed as well.
Well, these are very good points, actually, Chao. And, I don't know if you're going to agree or not, but a relationship or starting a relationship is like starting a new business. Okay. When you start a new business, you create a business plan. This is a relationship plan. That relationship plan will tell you exactly what are your value. What are you looking at when you search for someone special? What kind of attributes or traits this person should have? What is the SWOT analysis, the strength, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats in the relationship? So these are the boundaries that you were talking about, which is interesting because if, let's say, you were in a previous toxic relationship, you know what are the red flags. So these are the threats, right? The strength is what this person can bring into the relationship and what you can bring into that relationship. So this is like a two-way street. And a lot of people that I've counseled, they always look at a relationship, especially if they're very desperate and looking for one, to be able to jump into it without really thinking, without really putting everything into perspective. And they jump into it because, oh, if I don't have him or her, someone else will. So they go with desperation, unfortunately. So, and then they forget completely what's around them, what the other person do to them emotionally, physically, spiritually, and everything else. And they end up just regretting. And that just put them into a vicious cycle, which doesn't allow them to be able to trust anyone else in the future. And that because of it, I feel that people have to look at relationship just like a business, just like marriage, come to think of it, because marriage is a business contract, right?
Yes, yes, I love your analogy. It's amazing. I think, yeah, exactly. Like in the process, you're dating someone. How do you know what are the things that you keep the business plan going, right? You want it to be with someone like blah, 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 and that you don't know whether this person will change. How do you adapt to it? How do you know this is no, now it's the deal breaker?
Yes.
So I think keep a journal is really important, especially in a DV situation. Clients, I would encourage them to keep a journal as well, because, but remember, the safety is important, because you want to just keep it to yourself, whether it's in a like a digital form that only you can access that, or you can have some drawings, sketching using a coding system. For example, different colors represent different emotions, different shapes. But you know, it's just a reminder of what you're experiencing right now.
Yes. Yes.
And so you can accumulate that in the process, like, oh, this is crossing my personal boundary. This is going to another direction. This is out of my business contract. No, I'm not gonna do that. I'll find a way to either discussing this with my partner, or we can work through this, or no, this is not gonna work.
And and to reiterate what why we have to compare a relationship or a marriage as a business, is that at the end, the business is never guaranteed to have success. That's the thing. And because of that, people have to look as, I'm going to invest everything I got. I'm going to put all the effort I can into it. And the universe is the only entity that can either make it or break it. As long as you put all the effort possible, at least at the end, you could say to yourself, I don't regret per se the amount of effort that I put in, but it's sometime out of my control.
Yes, I think that goes to living in uncertainty. I think that's the silver lining of in the pandemic. We all go through this collective grieving process.
Yes.
We lost the certainty, we lost the normalcy, but we also learned, a lot of people are talking about that now, like, oh, now I realize I live in this uncertainty. That's like marriage is like, that's like a business. You have the plan, you are marrying to the perfect idealized situation scenario, but keep that in mind. I'm not trying to make you feel like upset or sad, but it is true, the uncertainty is actually beautiful. You look at it from another perspective, that leaves room for those parties to grow or to bloom into something else, right? Surprising you.
That is.
So yeah, live in the uncertainty. I think that's a way, and also ground yourself, being present, like through meditation or yoga. Those are really, really helpful for us to not overthinking or just worry about the future, but being present.
That is so true. And I really, really do appreciate. So how can our listeners find you, Chao?
Listeners can find me on Instagram, Chao Zhao Therapy, or you can find me at chaotherapy.com.
Beautiful. Well, on that note, Chao, this is the time that we have for today's podcast. And I really do appreciate you taking the time out of your very busy schedule to join us. And thank you again for participating and inspiring our many listeners with your incredible advice. Now, we hope that you've all enjoyed today's episode, and I'm also very excited about the many upcoming guests that we have scheduled for season 9 of the Happiness Journey podcast, filled with inspirational stories just like the one that you listened to today. Now, here are some concluding words of wisdom. Every decision you make is not a decision about what to do, but more about who you are. When you feel this, when you understand it, everything in your life will change. You begin to see like a new way, with a new perspective. All events, occurrences, and situation turns into opportunities. And that's what you must grab so you could meet your life purpose. Now, we all thrive to become the best version of ourselves, or at least most of us. We choose one decision over the other, and this decision may change completely our path in life. No one can predict the outcome of every decision we make in life. Some obvious one would be to go on a killing spree and expect to go free with no circumstances of our action, or best outcome, still be alive. But for most other decisions made in our life, we must pray that it is the best one. Common sense certainly helps with choices we make, but is not always guaranteed. You must first accept consequences of your decision and work around the good or bad that can come out of it. Stop worrying too much though. You're a smart person, so the odds are in your favor. My name is Dr. Dan Amzallag, and you may all keep pursuing your amazing journey in life.